Finally, time for the best division in football, the AFC East and West, diving through Dynasty depth charts today on the Football Guys College Football Show.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Football Guys College Football Show here. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment below while we're going through this. We love reading through there, and we will get to them. Sometimes late, but I will be there. Sometimes I forget, and I jump in there, and I will definitely leave them there. Sometimes on our personal email, and sometimes on our show. We're also available on all major podcast platforms. So if you check us out on YouTube for 10 or 15 minutes, go find us on iTunes. You can get the full episode over there. But let's dive in. I don't know who the heck wrote that intro. Best division in football in the AFC East. But we are doing the AFC East. We're going to do the Buffalo Bills. We're going to start with them and just kind of talk about what we can expect from them. Look at their dynasty impact. And I think the Bills are interesting in terms of, like, we have Josh Allen. He's actually going as quarterback 1, ADP 1.5, essentially him and Mahomes. Then at the running back position, you got James Cook, Jeff Bell's guy, running back 29. Damian Harris, running back 42. Then you have Latavius Murray and Naheem Hines out there. Wide receivers, you have Stephon Diggs going at wide receiver 13. Gabe Davis at wide receiver 52. And then Khalil Shakir, really, wide receiver 86. Everybody else is kind of going undrafted. And then Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. And Dalton Kincaid is tight end 6 right now, according to DLF's ADP. Dawson Knox is at tight end 37, and I was told he's a nobody. That's what is out there on the analyst streets. We're going to talk about that as well. But when I was going through this Bills kind of roster, and I'm getting yelled at right now somehow from Ravens Twitter, I was saying, like, wow, they have not really done a very good job putting things around Josh Allen in terms of being an NFL kind of talent when you look at that wide receiver room. So let's go to that first. Jeff's our Bills fan. He's the resident. He's been in some pain these last few years. What do you think of that wide receiver room? And with Diggs at wide receiver 13 in Dynasty, is Gabe Davis a viable option going in that 10th, 11th round?
I think Davis is a viable option. Wide receiver 52, he can definitely return value on wide receiver 52. Yeah. I mean, he was like wide receiver. I know he struggled last year and he was disappointing, but he was still a top wide receiver 36-ish, I believe. So to return value on wide receiver 52, definitely. Looking at the rest of the depth chart, I think that I know a lot of people out there, especially in Dynasty, are all about Khalil Shakir. But I was reading the reports from OTAs, and 1, Trent Sherfield looked very good, but 2, the team really likes Deontay Hardy. And I think that you're going to get into a situation where until Dalton Kincaid really steps up and is going to be on the field every down, I think you're going to have these other wide receivers just rotating around, and I don't think you're going to see real value out of any of them. So Shakir is a guy that I would probably look to move potentially in Dynasty if somebody's buying in on any sort of relative hype there. Any hype that's being generated is not coming out of really Bills camp. It's more fantasy Twitter contained. And so those are the situations that I think you want to look for in terms of reaping some Dynasty value.
Yeah. And in terms of like returning value this year, I think Gabe Davis certainly will on that wide receiver 52. But following the season, we're approaching the end of his contract. This is a contract year for him, and I don't know that he's done enough to garner a second contract with the Bills. I have to imagine that, assuming they don't get over that hump this year, they're going to try to reinvent their wide receiver room a little bit, and they're doing some patchwork with Sherfield and Hardy, I think. But I think they need to go get another guy, and I don't think that Gabe Davis is that guy now. If he goes and gets a deal from Kansas City, for example, next year, then you've obtained value in Gabe Davis. But I also think that really anywhere else he's going to lose value. So I'm kind of with Jeff in terms of like even past Diggs. I'm just not really interested in this wide receiver room in startups. I think, if you're building a win now roster, I do think that Gabe Davis is at a nice price point to, go get and be that like, oh, maybe I'll flex him this week on a contender, but it's not something that I'm really interested in. I also don't know that this is the final wide receiver room for the Bills. I know that, that DeAndre Hopkins is still out there and whatnot, but there's not too many options, but I also could see them moving to get someone else in this room because you're right, Kevin. They just have not put good receivers in that room outside of Diggs.
Go ahead, Jeff. Now this
Well,
is your.
the team does like Gabe Davis, to be very clear. And so when you're looking at Gabe Davis in terms of dynasty, I think there are two different avenues. Either one, he has a great season and he earns a big contract, and in that instance, then he's returning value on that wide receiver 52. Two, maybe he doesn't have a fantastic season, but the team really likes him and they keep him around, and you're still getting him tethered to Josh Allen. So I understand the concern that maybe there's a closing window on Davis, but I mean, looking at the two different paths, I think the team at least views him as a most every down player.
So let's go to the running back room. So Jeff has some projections on this running back room that got people in a tiffy. James Cook, I mean, running back 29 for James Cook, when you know he's going to be there. Do you buy into Damian Harris eating into that workload, or how do you look at that room, Jeff?
Well, I think Harris is certainly going to eat into that workload. It's just to project Damian Harris to lead the team in rushing or to be a major factor in rushing, it just ignores what the team has traditionally done out of the running back position. And I think that when you're looking at an offense built around Josh Allen, ideally you want, and it's going to be James Cook. I'm telling you right now, people, it's going to be James Cook. And you can say whatever you want about Damian Harris. James Cook was a second-round pick last year. When you're looking at this team, you're looking at how they're building. They're building to play 11 personnel with 2 tight ends, the ability to play multiple sets, to spread people out with Josh Allen's rushing ability, and it's complemented by having James Cook in that backfield with him. When you look at Nyheim Hines next to him, I know Nyheim Hines didn't do anything last year. It was just a kick returner, but they have an entire offseason to work the running back into the passing game, and Hines is that safety blanket on Cook, that if Cook were to miss time, Hines really steps up. And if you're in a PPR league, I wouldn't be shocked if Hines outscored Damian Harris, to be honest with you. And maybe that's a hot take, but I think Damian Harris and Latavius Murray are heads up in a training camp battle right now.
Yeah, when I look at this running back room, I don't really get excited for the rushing work anyway. I mean, I want the pass catcher out of the backfield, and that's certainly going to be James Cook. Um, with that being said, I do wonder what the ceiling of James Cook is, because I do think that Harris and Murray are going to get some carries. Maybe not Murray, but they brought Harris into maybe, I think one of the team's struggles last year was that when they went up, they had one method of playing and they didn't have a way to, okay, we're going to now run down the clock and we're not going to throw the ball as much in these situations. We're going to save Josh Allen a little bit. And so hopefully we can then make a long postseason run. I think Damian Harris is kind of there for that. I do think James Cook is on the field most of the time, and in neutral scripts, I think it's James Cook. So yeah, RB29, that's really good value because you're still getting a 23-year-old running back, and you can't really find 23-year-old running backs this late in dynasty startups. So I do think that when you're looking at trade value too, I mean, this is a guy that I would be actively looking to go get right now because of that perception that Damian Harris will eat into his fantasy performance, which I don't really see as the case.
We don't have a ton of time to talk about this, but Dalton Kincaid is tight end 6 in Dynasty. I know Jeff's take. I've heard it. He's in love with Dalton Kincaid based on who you're going to draft after, and I understand that. But are they putting a lot on his plate? 24-year-old, like I was getting Bills fans yelling at me all day today saying, "Oh, he's our slot receiver. He's this. He's this." I mean, I get that. That's what you want him to be. But is it crazy to think that Dawson Knox still going to get some run in that offense, and he's going to get used in different ways? Like, I don't think he's just out to pasture. I do think that they're going to utilize him that way. Like Freiermuth getting drafted after Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Greg Dulcich. I get those guys. Even Dallas Goedert, though, is getting drafted after Kincaid. Are we too high on Kincaid? Go ahead, Jeff. What do you think?
The way the team traditionally has used rookies under Sean McDermott has been very cautious. My expectation is right now, just like we've seen the last 2 years, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, and Dawson Knox are almost every single down players. And then you're going to have Dalton Kincaid, you're going to have Hardy, you're going to have Khalil Shakir, you're going to have Trent Sherfield, kind of rotating situationally. And that's what I expect that you'll see. I think that Kincaid or Knox is going to be on the field, and tight end 37 is just wild valuation on him, because I think that Josh Allen is still going to be looking for him in the red zone. And if anything, I think the addition of Kincaid potentially frees up Knox a little bit more, because having a second tight end in there to potentially handle some of the blocking. Yes, Knox will be the primary blocking tight end, but Knox is not a traditional blocking tight end. Knox is very athletic for the position, and he's certainly getting paid. So I think that, if you throw a fourth at Dawson Knox, I don't even know what's sitting right now at tight end 37. That's a complete afterthought. Throw a random rookie wide receiver at him, and you're going to have a tight end that you're going to be able to play in a pinch.
Dawson Knox is the 7th highest paid tight end in football right now.
Right.
I think that's something to remember as well. Is they went out and they paid Dawson Knox, and they still actively said, we're going to bring in Dalton Kincaid, but this is going to be a fundamental change in how we, to throw our personnel packages out there. So I think you're right, Jeff. I think at this value, that's pretty remarkable. And in terms of where you can get them in startups. Once again, though, I think this offense is going to take some time to change. And so I think you're right. I think Knox could be super productive this year. I have them, in my projections for 2023, Knox and Kincaid fairly similar. I do think Kincaid does start to get a lot more work towards the end of the season personally. And then I do see a world in which next year, this time, tight end 6 looks like about the right area. I think that's a bit overvalued right now, though, without, seeing what the split is between those two tight ends.
I think that's where I'm at with him. I just don't think Dawson Knox completely gone. Like, I think fantasy managers do, but I don't think NFL teams do. I think there's a difference between how they want to use those guys. All right, let's jump over to Jeff's actual favorite team, the Patriots. New England Patriots here. Let's get into what they look like, their dynasty value. Let's look at the roster. Mac Jones, ADP around QB 30. So a little bit of a fall for our boy Mac Jones. Bailey Zappi's at quarterback 37. Ramondre Stevenson, running back 11. A lot of love out there for Ramondre right now. Ty Montgomery's not getting drafted according to ADP in terms of where the draft ends there. Pierre Strong Jr., running back 84. Kevin Harris, running back 88. Wide receivers, these guys are all kind of the same. They're all getting kind of drafted the same outside of Juju Smith-Schuster at wide receiver 47. Devontae Parker, Tyquan Thornton, Keyshawn Butte, all in the wide receiver 90 category there. Tight end, Hunter Henry, tight end 42. Mike Gesicki, tight end 25. There's a lot of on this roster, boys. You don't know where. I guess the running back room is kind of where, we've heard some reports that Pierre Strong Jr. could be in that, white role and thinking about what we've seen from that. I know that Kevin Harris is still out there, Ty Montgomery. Stevenson, too. I think people are expecting a huge year from him. They're calling him like the Josh Jacobs of this year. Is that where you're at, Jeff? Or what are you thinking about this running back room?
Realistic range of outcomes. I think realistic range of outcomes, either Ramondre Stevenson can be the absolute bell cow in the backfield, or I think that Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong could get opportunities in the backfield along with Ramondre Stevenson. That we've seen a lot of teams trend towards using 3 running backs in rotations, and to pretend that Ramondre Stevenson has a stone cold lock on every single carry in this backfield and every single passing target out of the backfield is just wildly overly optimistic, I think, given the historic usage of the Patriots backfield.
Not only that, but Ramondre's fantasy season last year was very much so dependent on targets, and the additions to this wide receiver room and the tight end room indicate to me that they don't want to have to throw to the running backs as much as they did. I know that, last year that Matt Patricia offense was one of the worst in the NFL. I would argue that over the back half of the year, it was really gross. This year with Bill O'Brien, I think we're looking at something a little bit different. I think we're looking at, an attack that might still be that short and intermediate area. I think, there are a lot of values on this team, actually. But one of them, to me, is not Ramondre Stevenson at RB11. That's just a little too rich in terms of, I don't think he's that Josh Jacobs role. I do think Pierre Strong will take a lot of those pass catching duties. And honestly, I think that those things are going to help Mac Jones return value on that QB 30, because when you start to look at the quarterback landscape and some of the guys going ahead of him, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. So I have more values that I could pull from here, but Pierre Strong at RB 84 and Mac Jones at QB 30 are pretty glaring ones to me.
I'm going to talk about Mac. I think Mac's a value right now. I
Yep.
know that all of us have not. I mean, maybe not Jeff, but to me, I think he is. Like, I think with your, when you talk about that offense, what it looked like last year, they did not do him any favors, and it was not an offense that was going to set him up, for that. I don't see Bailey Zappi being a problem for him. I think that their weapons are better than they were last year. But I just think their offense is going to be better. I think that the philosophy and the scheme is going to be better to where you're not going to see that. Now, is Mac Jones going to be a league winning quarterback? I don't know. Probably not, but he can be a quarterback 3 or 2 on your Superflex team to plug in and play if you need him. And at quarterback 30, man, I feel like that's a value, especially in startups if you can go grab them. And I think that's just where I'm at with this team. Like, I think that's the rooms I want to deal with. The wide receiver and tight end rooms, not so much. You guys can talk about that, or Mac, wherever you want to go, Jeff.
I like Gesicki. I really like Gesicki quite a bit. And I think that when you're looking at potential wide receivers and tight ends out of this, that's the one that kind of stands out in my mind. And I do like grabbing Bailey Zappi. I hear you on Mac Jones, but there was a lot of turmoil, a lot of rumors about owners wanted to go one direction. Bill Belichick wanted to go the other direction between the quarterbacks. And so I hear you on Mac being quarterback 30, and he was much better as a rookie, but I think that leash is pretty tight, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I also think QB 37 for Bailey Zappi is fine value as well. I just think, when you're looking at if this offense does take a step forward, I think Mac Jones he's never going to be a top 12 guy on any given week, but I think you're looking at a guy that can finish QB, 15 to 20 every week. And that's kind of a good QB2 if you decided to wait at the position. Quickly, I think the wrong rookie wide receiver is being drafted.
Yeah.
I think Demario Douglas is the rookie wide receiver that you want. I'm not certain that Kayshon Boutte is going to make the team. It sounds like he struggled a bit in minicamp and he wasn't quite in shape. Whereas Demario Douglas came in and he was looking to prove himself a little bit, and he was impressive with his reps. So, I know it's wide receiver 96, and it doesn't matter a whole lot at that point. But, I mean, I'd rather have Demario Douglas in Dynasty than Kayshon Boutte, which sounds crazy right now. We've talked about Kayshon for a long, long time, but it's just you have to read the tea leaves. You have to be able to adapt, and I think that that's one of those adaptations I'm willing to accept right now.
Yeah, to me, I don't know why we're still drafting Kayshon. That's the one that stood out to me as I was going through it. The one thing that Belichick's not going to be able to stand is this person that's just not in shape, and it sounds like he's still not in shape. If you can't get in shape once you go to the NFL, I don't know what to tell you. I'm out there. I'm just out. All right, let's go to the Dolphins. Oh,
so real quick, if you have Boutte in Dynasty, are you just selling for anything that you can?
Yes.
Because
I don't see him. He's going to bounce around. If he gets cut here, he'll get on a practice squad somewhere else. And then we're going to be talking about Kayshon Boutte, like we talk about all these other guys. Oh, if he could just figure it out. And then people are just going to be going out there. But the nice thing is for Dynasty managers out there, Kayshon's got like this weird hive that follows him that they still were telling people to draft him in the second round when he got drafted by the Patriots. You could probably ship him off to those guys all throughout your league. So like there is going to be a market for Kayshon, especially because he was such a highly touted prospect. We're not talking about a fifth, a darling out here. We're talking about a legit wide receiver 1 prospect that just fell off. All right, let's go to the Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. This is a fun room for fantasy and just in general, like going through every single room here. Tua Tagovailoa going as QB 13, Mike White QB 44, Raheem Mostert running back 59, Jeff Wilson running back 58. So essentially, just pick your poison there and just hope and pray and press submit. Devon Chain going at running back 28. And then we have the wide receivers. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are really the two that we got to talk about. Wide receiver 10, wide receiver 5 for those guys. Tight end, Dermot Smythe is there, but Elijah Higgins is going as ADP 240 at tight end 40. I believe that there's some wide receiver tight end crossover there that people really like, and they think that he could do well in that system. It really comes down to what the hell you doing in this running back room. Mostert, Wilson, and Chain. Like, what are we doing here? How are we targeting this? And Dalvin Cook somewhere. There's been reports, where's Dalvin going to go? In case may be at the time of us recording this, there is no Dalvin anywhere if he lands here. So I think that's what you built into this ADP. But is there anybody that stands out to you, Christian, that you want to take a shot on?
I mean, I actually think all three of these have some built-in value here. I think Mostert still has something left in the tank. If you watch him play last year, I mean, he looked like he was a 23-year-old back running out there. He is still very fast. What I don't know is how they incorporate Devon Achane, because I think that when you look at the separation of roles, if they did attack it with a committee, I do think Achane kind of matches Mostert a little more than he matches Jeff Wilson. On the other side of things, I think Mostert that's the guy that they went out and got first last year. And then Jeff Wilson was kind of that secondary piece. He was in there when Mostert was hurt. And then when they were healthy, I think they rode the hot hand. And I think Wilson did, outperform Mostert a bit. But yeah, I mean, if you're in a startup, I think it's worth just throwing darts at this area. It's tough though. Mostert is certainly getting up there in age, and it's tough throwing darts at a guy that probably has a year or two left and might not have a role this year. But in the event that, Jeff Wilson and Devon Achane, go down with an injury or something like that this year, Mostert is a guy that you can play in your lineup every week. So at RB 59, I think that's pretty good. Achane at 28, I'm going to look. Yeah, I mean, that's right around where, I think that's fine value. That's right around where I have him ranked. It's just, I don't know exactly what his upside is. I think he's either going to be a top 12 guy consistently, or he's going to be a 24 to 36 guy consistently. And I don't know that there's much in between with him. So I don't know, Jeff, what do you think of this running back room?
Grab a piece if you can. I look at Wilson and Mostert as, if you're going to make a trade and you're going to make a trade with the manager that has one of these guys on their roster, I think they're great guys to slide in the trade, because I don't think that you're looking at a dynasty lens. It's kind of one of those things that people won't think twice about including them, because they're, as secondary piece, third piece in a deal, whereas you can definitely get some startable weeks out of them. It's just one of those that I love ambiguity, especially this time of year. And I think there's a lot of ambiguity with the Dolphins backfield. I just want to usually grab the cheapest piece possible. I think Achane, flashing back to rookie drafts, or if you haven't done your rookie draft yet, there's been some very aggressive valuations on him. I'm not entirely sure that carries over into the trade market, because I think it's kind of one of those things of, you probably have one person in your league that really believes in him and they already took him in the rookie draft. And so to really recoup value quickly on a trade. And plus, I think that looking at it, I think that Dalvin Cook probably grinds it up a little bit in terms of making a deal to move off of Achane or to acquire him, because I think everybody wants to see that piece land first.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I look at it too. Like, I think it's tough, but you want one of these guys. It's hard. It's ambiguous. It's like when in San Francisco, when we talk about Shanahan, it's the same stuff. I do think Tua at quarterback 13, he's not necessarily going around there. I think that's a very average ADP. I've seen him as low as quarterback 16. Tua could be a top 8 guy. Like, he really could in this offense. He could be like an 8-7 range. It's just the concussions. I mean, that's really the question mark. I mean, you could draft a guy at that ADP and then not have a second quarterback going into next year if he decides to retire. So there's risk involved. But I do think if Tua is your second quarterback at that ADP, you can win some leagues this year if he stays healthy. Like, because you're probably going to pair him with the top quarterback at that ADP. I mean, you could pair him with Allen. You could pair him with Mahomes somewhat. Like, you can get in that range with Hurts, those guys. So if you're going to pair him with that in a Superflex league, you could win your league. So there is value to be had there. It's just risky value.
If he didn't have the concussions, do you think that he would be going in the first round of Superflex drafts right now?
I think so. I think you go like 111.
Yeah. I did. So the Football Guys Twitter account tweeted out, or maybe it was Dave Kluge. There was something about what is the lowest quarterback on this list that has a realistic outcome to finish as the QB1 overall. And Tua was sitting down at like 13 or 14. And I said, it's Tua. When you look at like the first few weeks of last year before the injuries, I mean, he was balling. He was up there inside the top 5 and 6. And I know the splits, someone came back and said, the splits after week 11 weren't good, but I don't think that he was ever fully healthy last year, to be completely honest. I think when you get a fully healthy Tua, another year in this Mike McDaniel offense, you're looking at a guy that has a realistic outcome of a top 3 finish. And I know without the rushing aspect of his game, I know it would take a lot, but I think, QB 5, 6, 7 is well within his range of outcomes as well.
counterpoint to that. So last year, we got great health out of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. If one of those guys were to miss significant time, what does this passing attack look like?
I think Mike McDaniel would find a way to scheme it up to where it's still fine with one of those guys. Having both of those guys certainly does impact what they can do, but I think that's where they get a little bit creative. Maybe they, scheme up Braxton Berrios to get a ton of targets or something like that. Maybe they, split A-Chain out wide, even though I don't think that he quite has that in his game yet, but maybe by that time he does. I think I have enough faith in McDaniel to make something like that work, even in the event that one of those guys goes down for a significant period of time.
Man, the shade of the former great Cedric Wilson Jr. Cowboy. I cannot believe you just threw the dirt on that guy out there. But yeah, I agree. I think one of those guys down. Yeah, I think Tua's ceiling definitely goes down a little bit. I think that he can scheme him as much as you want. And I would argue that if Tyreek went down, it would be less. I don't want to say this because I'll get canceled. I think Jalen Waddle means more to this offense. So I would argue that if Tyreek went down, I'd be less concerned than if Waddle went down. But that's just, I guess I'm just an ageist. But go ahead, Jeff.
If you're in a super deep dynasty league, Eric Ezukanma, I think is a name to. If you're in a very deep dynasty league, or maybe you got an open roster spot right now, I think that's a name that you can potentially hear this summer.
Not River Crawcraft. You don't like the River Crawcraft out there? All right, I just wanted to get that on a show. All right, let's go to the Jets.
Washington State. Let's go.
Let's go to the Jets. Let's finish out the East here. Aaron Rodgers at quarterback 24. Zach Wilson at quarterback 53. Breece Hall is running back 4. Michael Carter running back 70. Israel Abanikanda running back 56. Zonovan Knights running back 83. So all these guys are getting drafted in that room. Garrett Wilson's at wide receiver 6. Allen Lazard at wide receiver 70. That's really the only ones getting drafted as far as top 24-ish. Tight end, Tyler Conklin's in there. Zach Kuntz is in there, tight end 35. So looking at this offense, obviously Aaron Rodgers being there is going to elevate these guys, we think. 39 years old. I think he was quarterback 13 overall last year. But when you're looking at, this, points per game, I think he came in like at 21 or something like that. So definitely had a really inefficient year. Do we think that Aaron can elevate like Garrett Wilson, where Garrett Wilson can return that wide receiver 6? I know me and Christian have talked about him on different shows where we do think Garrett Wilson can definitely elevate himself in that area. I don't know what Jeff's take is at on that. I see Garrett Wilson sells. I see all this stuff, but where are we at with Garrett Wilson, Jeff?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, you look at the offense having familiarity with that Green Bay system, when offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach and all that. I think that putting Wilson into a similar kind of where Devontae Adams sat, I think that Wilson can do a lot of those things that Devontae Adams did. Wilson attacked vertically a lot more last year, and really Devontae Adams with Oakland or with the Raiders attacked vertically as well. But I think that when you look at a lot of the things out of the screen game that Devontae Adams was used with Aaron Rodgers, I think Wilson has that crossover. And so Wilson can attack and win at all areas of the field, and that's what you're really looking for, and especially for a primary target for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and when you look at the makeup of this roster, I know ADP doesn't necessarily indicate usage by teams, but when only one other wide receiver is getting drafted, I think that indicates that the room isn't very good. I think McCole Hardman certainly has a role on this team. I think Corey Davis could. I guess I don't understand the discrepancy between Lazard and Corey Davis personally. I know Lazard has familiarity, but yeah, I mean, when you look at Devontae Adams's splits, his target share for those main 4 years that he was dominant, 27%, 23%, 29%, 29% again, and leaning to 30%. I think Garrett Wilson could absolutely hit something like that or close to that. And if he does, I mean, he has wide receiver 1 in his range of outcomes as well. And you look at, comparing him to, some of those other guys, he's 22 years old. He's probably one of the younger guys inside that top 10. I don't know exactly where Drake London's going, even though we just talked about it. He's the younger one, but that's a young receiver. I wouldn't be shocked if we're talking about Garrett Wilson as wide receiver 2 or 3 next year.
Yeah, I agree. Drake London's going about 11, 12, so he's in that range in there. No, I agree. I think Garrett Wilson can be there. I think you're excited about that because I think you got him as a discount last year, a huge discount because people were not touting him. We were, but there's people out there not touting him in there, and I think that you got a good return there. Running back room, there's rumors out there with maybe Cook being added. Brees is sitting at running back 4 coming off an ACL. I don't. Do we take Carter? Who would you rather have, Carter, Abanikanda, or Knight? If you had to pick one of those guys, where are you going, Jeff?
Abanikanda, because they just added him, probably, and adding him, I think, says something about what they think about Carter and Knight, realistically.
Okay, same.
Easily, actually, yeah. And I do want to, our post-draft show, we were talking about Izzy and how he potentially could have a role early. That's a lot of the buzz right now, too, is that the Jets feel like they can lean on him to take some of the load away from Brees as he recovers first, whereas I don't think they feel confident doing that with Carter or Zonovan Knight. And I don't know how much of a role he has once Brees is 100%, but I think it's enough that you're returning value on that RB56, and that's a high value, injury away replacement add to your roster.
Yeah. Grab Jeremy Ruckert. I don't know why he's the last tight end.
This guy's been talking about Ruckert for years.
So I'll second that. He's better than Zach Kuntz. I don't understand the 7th round tight end over the day 2 tight end thing that's going on. Ruckert was hurt leading into last year. I think that certainly impacted. And Conklin and Uzomah had key roles. If you're drafting one of these tight ends, I honestly think it would be Ruckert over the other guys. Maybe Conklin in the event that he gets a pass catching role, but don't draft Zach Kuntz would be my advice on that tight end room.
I'll take a shot on Conklin. I can't draft Ruckert out of spite for Jeff because if Ruckert scores a touchdown, I'm gonna quit the industry altogether. But yeah, so we have that. Any love for Zach Wilson? No, drafting him at all? Right? No, we're done. We're done with Zach. Yeah. Good luck, Zach. I wish you the best. I hope that you find a team somewhere in the XFL. All right, let's go to the AFC West and let's go over there. Let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, quarterback 2 or 1. It's really just preference, I think, with who you want between the 3 guys. We did our quarterback tiers, looking at Mahomes, Hurts, and Allen. Really, it just kind of comes there. Running backs, Isaiah Pacheco's going as running back 33, Jerick McKinnon at running back 48, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back 53, and then Deneric Prince, running back 87. So all these guys are getting drafted in that ADP range. Wide receiver is it's a mess. Kadarius Toney, wide receiver 42. MVS, wide receiver 82. Sky Moore, wide receiver 61. Rashee Rice, 56. And then Justin Ross sneaking in there, wide receiver 99, because we have to give a Justin Ross take on the show. Travis Kelce's tight end 1 still sometimes. I think it just depends on the Dynasty League. I've seen him go from tight end 1 to tight end 3. And then Noah Gray. I still like Noah Gray, but he's not getting drafted right now. So that is kind of our room here. There's all kinds of. Let's go to the wide receivers. Let's talk about the wide receivers here. So I'm under the mindset of when I get a wide receiver room like this, I usually take the one that I think is the most talented, but is the cheapest. So when I'm looking at it, I'm like, Toney feels high to me. I don't know why. I just don't trust Kadarius Toney. Even though he's wide receiver 42, I see the arguments out there. To me, he's high. Is he high to you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I don't know. I understand why he's sitting there, but at the same time, that feels aggressive to me. I've seen stats. People have stats out there that he's got insanely high targets per route run, and I think that when I look at that, the context that I look at that is basically this guy can do one thing, and when he's on the field, he's going to get the ball, and otherwise he's just not going to be on the field. And I look at it, and I like Sky Moore still, to be honest with you, and I think that the talk from Andy Reid was basically last year they threw a whole lot at Sky Moore. They had him learning every single wide receiver position so that they can move him throughout formation. That tells me that they expect Sky Moore to be the guy that's going to be on the field all the time, whereas some of the other guys might be a little bit more situational.
Yeah, Kadarius Toney isn't a real receiver. I don't understand. Like, he can't win downfield. He has to have the very specified Debo role where, not all of his targets, but most of his targets are behind the line of scrimmage. He's getting creative touches. He's a glorified gadget guy to me, whereas really all of these other guys have the upside to, run routes and win downfield. Sky Moore, especially, I'm in on that. I've been in on that. You guys know my feelings on Sky Moore, and I really don't understand even him going. I love Rashee Rice as well. I just think when you look at the struggles of Sky Moore and last year and how he failed to get on the field, I don't know why you would then do that same thing with Rashee Rice this year. I would take the second-year guy that has a year with Patrick Mahomes to build some of that rapport. I do like Rashee Rice at a value. I would just flip those two values, I think. And then I'd be remiss not to talk about Richie James. He was really good for the Giants last year. I think that he should be getting drafted, especially over Justin Ross. So, yeah, I mean, I think Richie James could come in and have a role as well. But, yeah, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, Richie James, those are really the only three in this room I'm interested in.
Yeah, you took my Richie James take. How the heck are we drafting Justin Ross over Richie James right now? Justin Ross has not played. And as much as we love Justin Ross from his freshman year, which was now what, 5 years ago, right? I can't really do math in my head, but like it's been a while since we've seen a healthy Justin Ross in the field. We just saw Richie James do it in the NFL. It wasn't amazing, but he did it. And so I don't think like a Ross late selection is where I'm going with that. To me in this room, it's Sky Moore or bust. Like if I'm looking at ADP of the guys at ADP, I will take a shot on Sky Moore. Running back room, win now. I guess you're with Pacheco, just trying to get it. I think McKinnon offers some value from a PPR standpoint, but again, I guess that offense is going to look kind of the same. Bieniemy, again, I know it's Andy Reid, so McKinnon is definitely going to use. Do we take a shot at our boy Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back 53? Do you take a shot at him, Christian? You're shaking your head, yes?
I am.
Okay.
I think Clyde, I'm not certain that this is the exact fit for him, and maybe this isn't where he hits. I also think he's still kind of talented. I think Andy Reid had a ton of praise for him this year. I don't know if that's praise as in he's Isaiah's backup or if it's, Clyde looks good and looks like the player that we expected him to be. But at running back 53, I mean, in the event that Pacheco goes down, I don't think they turn to undrafted free agent Deneric Prince. And so I'm okay taking a shot on Clyde in the event that he does have some of that pass catching role as well. And we're just kind of not projecting it right. Right now I have Pacheco and McKinnon leading that room for 2023, and Clyde doesn't have a contract after that. So it's a risky pick, but I'm in at RB53. Why not? Why not? First round capital. Isn't that all that matters?
Who had more RB1 weeks last year? Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Ken Walker?
Probably Ken Walker.
They had the same amount of RB1 weeks in PPR last year.
Yeah.
So
that's how many? 0?
3.
Okay.
3.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Pacheco's a hard one for me. I'll be honest. Right. I get the value running back 33, but we've seen guys with that draft capital, they just in Dynasty don't return that value, right? Like, and I think this room is tough to kind of gauge there. I like McKinnon with his PPR value there, and Kelsey's Kelsey. You draft him, you're probably keeping him on your roster forever. Like, you just know that going into it, just hoping you win the league year one.
Yeah. Pacheco just, I don't know if he stays healthy for the entire season. God bless that guy. But I love watching him run, but this dude just runs as fast as he can into the first guy that he sees, like more often than not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, is he? That was going to be my question. Is he a good running back? Because
no,
I don't think I think he's just a fast guy.
He just hits the hole hard. That's it. I mean,
I was wrong about Ronald Jones. I'm ready to admit that. He reminds me of Ronald Jones that first year before that breakout year, where he just was running like he had like a chicken with his head cut off, and that's kind of how he ran, and that's how Pacheco runs. I'm not certain that's sustainable. We saw what happened with Ronald Jones. So
it could get better though. I mean, realistically, we could talk about him and we're doing that. I get what you guys are saying. But he feels like a total win now piece. So if you're going for it, running back 33 is you're probably running back 3, maybe not bad. Like if you're going to wait on that running back 2 and you grab him, don't hate it. So like in terms of just strategy, not a bad area there. All right, let's go to the Chargers now. So let's go take a look at the Chargers and what we're doing there. Justin Herbert, quarterback 5. Running back room, Austin Eckler, running back 7. Kelly is at running back 68. Isaiah Spiller, running back 72. Wide receiver room, Keenan Allen, wide receiver 36. Mike Williams, wide receiver 41. Quentin Johnston, wide receiver 27. Joshua Palmer, wide receiver 83. Tight ends, Gerald Everett, tight end 26. As far as this goes, I'm a big believer in Herbert. Like, I've seen, some kind of naysayers talk about him. I think we forget this kid played with like a torn rib cartilage last year. He didn't have his, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen in and out of the lineup. Outside of those weapons, Josh Palmer kind of fell off a little bit. He had Eckler there, but again, Herbert really struggled with weapons down the stretch, and he still showed that he could play through that injury. If one of us, sleeps wrong in their bed, we're out for 3 or 4 weeks, like questionable for the podcast. This dude played with torn, rib cartilage. I think he's getting undervalued a little bit, in my opinion, because I have seen him go lower than 5 before. 6, 7, 8 in that range. So I do think Herbert's one of those guys that could have a huge year this year. I love the addition of Quentin Johnston in this offense. Go ahead, Jeff. Give me a guy, give me a room. What do you want to talk about?
Running back room, probably. I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised, and I'm going to say yet that they didn't add another running back as a compliment to Austin Eckler, because it seems like they've tried to move that direction every single offseason to add a competent complement, and especially with who is the Kellen Moore coming in as the OC. And the Cowboys having that dual committee usage last year. And so that leaves the door open for Ezekiel Elliott to be that running back maybe, or it says a lot about what they believe. And I still believe that Joshua Kelly last year emerged clearly as that second back, and maybe Spiller can get there, but Spiller looked like he was running in mud when he was playing in the SEC, much less the NFL, relative to, I think, what Joshua Kelly's upside is.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the running back room. Sorry, Jeff. I want to talk about the 2020 season where Dak Prescott averaged 27 points per game for the first 5 games before his injury. And so that's the same offensive coordinator. You brought up Kellen Moore. That's what made me think about it. I think that when you look at Justin Herbert's range of outcomes, he's not being valued as a player that could finish as the 1 overall. And we don't have a full sample, but we have actual evidence of this specific type of offense returning a QB1. So I think that's really good value. I'll talk about the running back room, even though I don't want to. Kelly is fine value. I wouldn't draft anyone else. I also just do not think that they are done adding. I really don't. I think Zeke is probably going to find a home here. That is my conspiracy theory, that he's just kind of waiting until someone goes down in training camp. But I think going back with Kellen Moore would be a good option for Zeke as well, and be that secondary piece. So that's why I kind of stay away from this running back room outside of Eckler. Eckler is very much so a win now piece as well. I know he just got that new contract, but we're getting to the point where, he's getting to that age where it's not time to add him to your roster. It's time to ship him away. So I'm kind of just staying away from that running back room.
If you want Eckler, wait till after this year and trade for him at like running back 20 price, and just ride out that last year probably of production. Like that's how I would look at Eckler in there. I think, to me, I'm not drafting Mike Williams. Like, I think even at wide receiver 41, with the back surgery stuff coming out, all the injuries with Quentin Johnston there, I just have a hard time. I like Mike Williams, but I just have a hard time being like, I can rely on that guy in Dynasty. Like, I really think Quentin Johnston's the guy to really go grab. And at wide receiver 27, that's a pretty good value, because he could find himself in that wide receiver 14-18 range next year pretty easily, tied to Justin Herbert. Feels like a smash, even if you're kind of down in Johnson as a prospect there. Anything else in this room?
That was a good point, Kevin. I agree. Johnson could be right on that fringe of Dynasty wide receiver 1 in a year. That's exactly the type of player you want to add.
I appreciate you saying that on this, I don't know, Twilight episode. All right, let's go to the Raiders. Let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. Quarterbacks, Jimmy G, quarterback 32. Aiden O'Connell, Purdue legend, quarterback 51. Running back is Josh Jacobs at running back 8. Zamir White's going running back 76. Devontae Adams at wide receiver 17. Jacoby Myers at wide receiver 49. Hunter Renfrow, wide receiver 97. Tight ends, Michael Mayer is going as tight end 13. Austin Hooper is really not getting drafted in terms of dynasty relevancy here. I will say this. When I was doing this today, doing the show sheet, this room is disgusting. And they did not do a good job around Jimmy. I really think that this offense could be one of the worst offenses in the NFL. And if Jacobs, I don't know if Jacobs can play. I think he will play. He hasn't, in terms of like he hasn't signed his contract yet, but he will in terms of, what that looks like. I know he's upset about it. Will he sign it or not? He'll probably come back on that 1 year. But even then, look at that quarterback group. You have Jimmy G, who cannot stay healthy. And the two guys you have behind him are Brian Hoyer and Aiden O'Connell. I am very concerned about this room. Devontae is a stay away from me in Dynasty in terms of like who I would go grab. Jacoby doesn't make me excited. I guess Hunter Renfrow maybe, but I just don't see it. Do you guys see anybody you'd really want in this offense outside of Jacobs and Mayer? I like Michael Mayer, but
yeah, no, I don't. I don't. I mean, maybe in redraft, depending on where you can get Adams, but other than that, no. And I talk about being surprised the Chargers didn't add a running back. I am shocked the Raiders didn't add a running back. And I think like maybe Leonard Fournette feels like, why wouldn't you sign Leonard Fournette and potentially use him as your third down back and safety blanket in case Josh Jacobs does actually sit out while he's sitting out on the market. I mean, that seems logical to me, but to go into last season, and I think that it's important to note early on last season, I do think that they wanted to have that backfield usage similar to what the Patriots had. It's just that their options in the passing game were Amir Abdullah and Brandon Bolden. They were terrible. And if you really look at the way Josh Jacobs was used the first couple weeks of the season, they tried to use one of those guys as that James White role. And then they finally just said, these guys can't play. So to go through another off season and not add another body there, that seems just very strange to me.
I've heard rumblings that they really like Zamir White and think that he could be a guy that steps up. Now, if Jacobs plays, Zamir White doesn't really have a role. Zamir White, to me, at RB76, though, is a pretty high-value injury away type of add to your team that you could then flip to the Jacobs manager, and you're getting some nice return on that. I like Zamir as a prospect. I think he's a talented runner. I think the athleticism is really nice. I just, we just did see what they wanted to do with Jacobs. And when you look at the rest of the roster, I think they're going to need to do that again. Aiden O'Connell at QB 51. Why not? I mean, Jimmy's contract is void if he can't pass his physical at training camp, right? Like there were stipulations in that contract where, he might not even be on the roster. Now it sounds like he will be healthy and whatnot, but they have concerns over his foot injury. And so at QB 51, that's one of those like, there's a path here. And from a strategy standpoint, I think those are the types of quarterbacks that you add late in drafts. And then outside of that, that's about it. Michael Mayer is a really good value at tight end 13, in my opinion, though.
I like Mayer there.
And they trade a second round pick for Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, fair.
He'll still target Michael Mayer though. Like I still think that Mayer can kind of earn those bad targets out there. I think my big thing is Jacobs. I've kind of been off a little bit on Jacobs just because I get worried about the contract area there. Last year was the first year that he truly did stay healthy. Like, and again, we're not going to be able to like look at health and say we can do that. But I do think it's that, and I think too, like there was now I want to credit it, so I'll figure. I think it was Deagle from 4 for 4. He tweeted out something about usage, and he looked at how many carries a running back gets in terms of top 5 ever. Their second year, only one back actually got even close to his fantasy production. I think it was within like 100 fantasy points from the second year, and that was Le'Veon Bell. And we all know Le'Veon Bell runs a lot differently than Josh Jacobs does, and he showed that he had that consistency there. So I think I worried about the usage there, and I also did highlight Zamir White. I don't think Zamir White is as bad as people think he does within reason, like within the red zone. I think that he can get those, short yardage situations. We can see that there, but this offense just is not conducive to fantasy score point. I just, I don't see it. Maybe they'll prove us wrong. And it really comes down with Jimmy, but that offensive line didn't get that much better either. So like when you're looking at it overall, I think you got to be very concerned about all of those things. There's a lot of red flags, red flag. All right, let's go to Denver. Let's ride, baby. So Russell Wilson at quarterback 23, Jarrett Stidham not getting drafted there, Javonte Williams at running back 17, Samaje Perine at running back 44, Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 24, Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 48, Tim Patrick, wide receiver 84, Marvin Mims, wide receiver 54. They also have Marquez Callaway and KJ Hamler there. Greg Dulcich, tight end 15, Adam Troutman and Albert O are not getting drafted. Their ADP is not there. So do we believe Russ is back, Jeff? Can you trust him at quarterback 23 in Superflex drafts?
I'm glad to see he's going to be in shape. So that's good. I think that I worry because I think that he wants to play like Drew Brees, and realistically, maybe probably has to play like Drew Brees. My concern is that his processor is not nearly as fast as Drew Brees, and he's always been a player that has held on to the ball, allowed things to create and attacked vertically downfield off of a strong play action game. And so Sean Payton coming in and trying, I think that last year he tried to be Drew Brees and that failed dramatically. And so I think that if Peyton tries to shove him into that role, I worry about that because I don't know that he is that level of player in terms of making quick reads and getting the ball out accurately. But if Sean Payton, the thing that I do like about Sean Payton's offense is that he's done a very good job of molding around talent. And I think that when you look at his scheme, he's worked different players through as the primary option between Marcus Coleman, between Michael Thomas, between Alvin Kamara. And so having that creativity. And so that plays into Russell Wilson.
I think that's also why they went out and got Marvin Mims, because I do think that they still want Russ to attack vertically. They know that, Russ's best film is when he was able to throw downfield. Cortland Sutton, I think Cortland Sutton's still talented. He is very much so not a field stretching threat to me. Tim Patrick, when healthy, can be that. But I think when you look at the rest of the wide receivers, actually, Marvin Mims, Marquez Callaway can be something of that nature. KJ Hamler, to me, I'm still in. I know I shouldn't be, but I'd rather take a shot on KJ Hamler tied to Russ and Sean Payton over some other guys late in drafts. But so at wide receiver 54, Marvin Mims is a fantastic value because he's very much so a part of that plan. That is the new regime that took him. Whereas Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, I think, are those guys that I stay away from in every single draft because I don't know where they're going to be next year, and I don't think it's going to be Denver. I don't think they're as good as they once were or how fantasy managers thought of them, for example, with Jeudy. So that being said, I think that Sean Payton is creative enough. I think Russell Wilson at QB 23 is a fine value, and I will scoop him as much as I can. And he's not going to be on my roster very long. I'm probably going to take him and I'm going to play him for a couple weeks, hope that he has like 2 or 3 QB1 weeks in a row, and then I'm going to flip him immediately. But I'll scoop him in startups at that value.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the wide receiver room goes, I'm kind of with you guys on that. I do like Tim Patrick as a late dart throw at wide receiver 84. They do have, before the injury, he was getting over a couple 700-yard seasons, and he does have a relationship with Russ. He's 29, though. Really, what you're looking at there is maybe he'll have an okay year. He's got to be out Marvin Mims. Running back room, I'm staying away from Javonte because of the injury. I've had that kind of precedent all year in terms of Dynasty and what that is. Samaje Perine, I like as a late guy, running back 44, who could get some usage early with pass catching, and they went out and got him. So that's kind of how I look at there. Anything else about the Broncos?
Greg Dulcich. Greg Dulcich is the kind of trendy thing that I just hate, out of spite. But then looking at his ADP is the type of thing that I want to invest in. And I wrote the spotlight about Greg Dulcich for the site. And I think that when I look at the addition of Adam Troutman, I think that that's going to come in and be the primary blocking back. And so I comped Dulcich to Marcus Colston when I wrote that article, because that was a player that was he was a tight end ish in college, and Peyton really used him as the big slot. And so shortly after I wrote that article, Peyton was talking about Dulcich being the joker in this scheme. So I think if Dulcich moves around, there could be a lot of goodness there.
Yeah, I just want to argue with you, Kevin, about Javonte. I might be the lone person still in on Javonte, though.
I am too, Christian.
Okay, so we're the lone two people. It's an oxymoron there. But you know what? I think that he's going to be heavily, heavily involved in this offense. I think that he is going to be healthier. The more that comes out about his injury, he's already cutting off of his knee. That is not something that, J.K. Dobbins could even do. And I know that their injuries get compared a lot. And there were initial reports that his injury was a little more complex once they got in to operate on the knee. But it seems like from an athleticism standpoint, I think that he is in good shape to be ready by week 1. He will be on the field week 1. Maybe he doesn't get the full workload until midway through the year, but that's a guy that at RB17, that value to me is only going to go up because we know what Sean Payton likes to do with his running backs, and they don't have a clear guy that would take targets like they did with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, for example. I think Javonte could be more of a bell cow than even we've seen in Payton offenses.
If he's healthy. Because if that knee is completely shot, like we keep hearing, you're not getting that value back. And I think that's where I come from. There's other options around that ADP. So if we're going to argue, that's what my argument would be, is that there's other options around that ADP that I feel comfortable drafting in Dynasty, especially with the shelf life of running backs. So like, I get it. If you think he can get back up there in that top 12 category, then yeah, I understand why you would go out there and kind of take him. But if you don't feel like he's going to be able to get back up there, why are you taking him at running back 17 anyway? Like I feel like there's other guys maybe after that you could take to get higher production this year, help you win, and they can still sit around that 18 to 22 range, and you're still happy with that for the next 2 seasons. That would be my only counter argument to that one.
Yeah, that's fair. Totally fair.
All right. We're done. We just went through all of there. Jeff, are the Bills going to win a Super Bowl this year? What do you think?
No, of course not.
All right. I just got to ask. We're just going to get that out there. Bills fans, stop coming after me. All I said was I felt like they haven't really built around Josh Allen correctly. And I'm getting yelled at. I'm getting yelled at by everybody. I'm getting yelled at by Bills fans. I'm getting yelled at by other opposing fans. But we appreciate you guys as always. Hit that like and subscribe button. Find us on iTunes, Spotify, everywhere you find your podcast. We'll be back next week on July 6th to kind of finish out this series on the divisions. You guys have a good 4th when we don't see you guys. Be safe, please. Until then, I'm Kevin Coleman.
I'm Jeff Bell.
And I'm Christian Williams, and you just watched the Football Guys College Football Show.